Hi, it's the Chappiness Guide. Welcome to today's episode of Vestibular Talks. Today's special guest is Steve. Steve is taking us on a journey where he's making a difference about chronic illness, more specifically about Meniere's disease. Steve also took a bike trip across America to raise awareness and funding for Meniere's disease research and treatment. All right, guys, remember to like, share, and subscribe. Enjoy the episode and find your happiness. All right, Steve, how are you today?
I'm doing fantastic, Johan. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure, and I'd like to thank you for taking the time to raise awareness and participate in this episode of Vestibular Talks. So, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Steve, would you mind telling us a little bit about who you are and how your journey began?
Yeah, my name's Steve Schweer, and I live in Colorado. I was diagnosed in 2015 with Meniere's disease. So that's what this episode will be talking about, will be me and my disease. I had symptoms starting in 2012. Took me 3 years to get diagnosed and 10 specialists I had to go. So it's anyone with Meniere's will understand that it's just tough to get diagnosed. There's just so many different things that could go wrong. And so once I got diagnosed, then I had to put the energy into figuring out how to manage my symptoms and stuff like that. So it's been about an 8 to 9 year journey at this point.
Wow. When you say that in around 2012, the symptoms started, what were they like? What do you feel first?
The first year was completely tinnitus, just the ringing in the ears. And I had that for a complete year. So I went to an ENT a few times in the first year to figure out what the tinnitus was, because it was just shocking. It just came out of nowhere, split second. It wasn't a gradual thing. It just blew up. And so the tinnitus showed up. And for a year, that's the only symptom I had. But then I started getting vertigo attacks, and I started getting nausea and the dizziness and the hypercosis and all the other symptoms that go with Meniere's. So then I started seeing other specialists, MRIs, autoimmune stuff, and being tested for everything under the sun. So ended up finding a specialist in Denver who was great, understood my situation, took on my case, and he's been a super big help for me.
All right. Steve, when you say you had vertigo attacks, how long do the episodes roughly last for?
I've had episodes last for longer than 24 hours at worst. On average, they're 8 to 12 hours. And when I first started getting them, I was getting them 3 or 4 times a week. And so my life was unlivable, because after a 12, 16-hour vertigo attack, it's a 24-hour recovery period. Then I'd have another one right after that. And that was my cycle for 2 years. And now I had 3 gentamicin injections in my left ear, and over the last few years, and it's really helped. I'm down to one vertigo attack a month or two now, but they're lasting shorter and shorter. My last few have been under 8 hours, which have been fantastic, but it's still no fun.
No, of course. And Steve, for people that have never experienced it, I tell them vertigo is one of the most debilitating symptoms of any condition out there, because you don't have balance, you don't have control over your body, you don't know how you don't know what side is up, what side is down, and it's a very scary feeling inside. Like you feel the anxiety races up because you're out of control. Like you don't know, and you don't know for how long it's gonna last, which is worse. So go ahead.
I was just going to say, it's hard to explain to people what that's like if they've never experienced it, because it's like being abducted by an alien, taken to outer space, probed and sent back, and you try to describe it to someone and they're just like, I don't understand. I don't have a box to put that in. So when I try to describe vertigo, it's very difficult to describe, because it's something that there's not really a box to put it in, because you go to some very dark places during a vertigo attack. It's almost like you're not even on the planet anymore. You're floating and spinning. And so the description of a vertigo attack, I think, is very hard to articulate, because it's hard to describe the indescribable.
Yes. Yes, you're very right. Now, Steve, how at that point when the Vertigo episodes started happening, I'm assuming you were living a regular life with a job, with going out with friends and family, being active. How
Uh,
did that impact your life?
Well, at first I tried to keep working, and I had a very physical job driving heavy equipment, bulldozers and loaders and snow plows up in the mountains. And I started getting vertigo attacks during that, and I made good money, and I was very proud of taking care of my family financially and stuff. But I couldn't do it anymore. It was becoming dangerous. So I had to
Yes.
scale back to jobs that weren't as demanding, but also didn't pay half as well. So I had to cut way back, and then I did those for a while. I worked at some golf courses, on and off. But even that ended up, I had very understanding bosses, but even that, after a while, I just couldn't do it. So I had to throw in the towel completely. And 3 years ago, I was able to get onto disability. And so now my full-time job is managing my disease. It's my full-time job. That's what I do now for a living. And it's a horrible spot to be in, self-esteem wise. It's a horrible spot to be in when I look at who I am now compared to what I should have become. There's a loss there. You feel a huge loss there that everyone has to deal with, that deals with any kind of a burden.
You're right, and it creates a lot of guilt inside because we
Absolutely.
we kind of lost who we were, and not only that, but you kind of feel like you just said, you don't want to become a burden to your family, to your friends, so you feel guilty when anybody's trying to help you because you feel like this is a type of help that you should endure on your own type of thing, right? You don't want to worry or bother anybody with it. So I completely understand what you're saying. Steve, when you got the actual diagnosis of Meniere's, it's not a very well-known condition. Now it is more than before. But when you first got it, what do you think about? Like, do you know anything about Meniere's?
um, I had no idea what it was, and it scared me to death. I'm healthy 1 minute, and the next minute, a doctor's saying you have this debilitating, crippling disease that is chronic, and you're going to be like this the rest of your life. Nobody wants to hear that. And so, of course, I started doing my research and just found out more and more about the disease, and then it makes you more and more discouraged. What ended up happening was I pretty much went through the whole grieving process of like losing a loved one. I had to go through the denial. I don't have a disease. I got very resentful. I got very angry, and I had to work through all those things like it was an actual grieving process of a lost, a loved one, and ended up with acceptance and forgiveness. And I had to forgive myself, and I continue to have to accept and forgive myself for who I've become. And like you said, I have a great wife, and I have an 18-year-old son that I've raised with this disease since he was 12. And you have to forgive yourself because you're just not who you used to be. But I had to work through that whole process step by step. And that was the most healthy thing I could have done because I was stuck. I was getting depressed. It just it's a mental drain. It's a physical drain. I think the emotional stuff was the toughest. I think that was harder than the physical stuff. It still is.
Okay, absolutely, and you're right. Like it's the way how you described it is. I never thought about it, but it's like almost like losing a loved one. You're right. It's you grieve for a long time. You are in denial. You get angry. You ask why me, why, and especially because we were healthy and normal
Yeah.
prior to this just kind of happening out of nowhere. So
Yes.
it is a big process to adjust for sure. Now, Steve, when they first found the condition or when they first diagnosed it, did they say anything to treat it? Like, did they give you? I know some people get some pills that decrease the fluid in the ear. Other people go into a low sodium, low salt diet. Like, did they provide anything for you to kind of like find relief?
After 5 years, once I got my final diagnosis with the doctor who still takes my case now, yes, I'm on a diuretic now. I'm on a low salt diet, under 1,500 milligrams of salt a day, and I carry diazepam, Valium with me, and I carry Dramamine with me just in case. And I've found that those, If I start feeling an attack coming on now, I can pop a 2 milligram diazepam, and that'll usually keep my attack under 4 hours at this point.
I can imagine, like that's so. And for you're right, for people that don't live this, it's so hard to put into perspective how the massive impact that a condition like this has in someone's life, and not just your life, but like your wife's, your child. Like they see you as a person that they almost like they never knew, because you completely change from having a condition that is so debilitating. Now, Steve, you say that these attacks last a period of hours. Now they are decreasing more and more. Is there anything specific that triggers them, like something that will just kind of like send you into a spiral?
No, that's another thing that you battle with Meniere's is what is causing this. And that's part of the madness, especially early on, the first 3 to 4 to 5 years of having Meniere's disease. You go into an attack. Did I eat too much salt? Did I ride in the car too long? Did I read too long? Did I, you question every single thing. And that is maddening. And even I still do it today. I had an attack on my e-bike trip. And it's like, right in the middle of my trip, halfway through my trip, I had a massive attack. And I spent a day running through my head. What did I do different? What did I do different? What did I do wrong? For me, I think it just hits me when it wants to hit me. I don't have a choice. But I do get a warning. I know it's coming on. I get about a 10 or 15 minute warning, and then I just have to ride it out. But yeah, I don't think, salt's a trigger. Early on, there's things I can do that will cause an attack, but I've managed those down to lowering my salt, keeping a diuretic in me, stuff like that. But, you just always question it. It could always be, you can drive yourself insane trying to figure it out. So I kind of quit trying to figure it out. So I just kind of figured out what triggered me a lot, cut those down, and then now I just live the way I live and hope I don't go that route.
Yes. When you said that you get about a 15-minute warning, what does it feel like?
I get a hot sweat. I get a hot flash. I'll start just perspirating down my back, down my neck. It drips off my face. I feel that wishy-washiness of my head swimming. And that's just the worst feeling in the world. You can't stop it. And you just know it's just going to start swirling and swirling and swirling faster and faster while you're sweating. And then it's just kind of like, I don't know which way's up or which way's down. And at that point, if I'm in a safe place, I can lay down and just ride it out. But if I've had attacks where earlier on when I wasn't sure what was going on, it was just like I would feel so drunk, I would just fall over and I would try to stand up. I would try to fight it. And then I realized after 50 or 60 attacks, you just don't fight it. You can't fight it. You have to find a place to ride it out, because fighting it just makes it worse and you're going to endanger yourself or someone else.
Yes, you're right. Steve, someone asked me before, do you ever get used to this? What would you tell that person?
No, I've never gotten used to it, and I still deal with anger and resentment and stuff, self-esteem issues, all the emotional baggage that comes with a chronic illness. What I tell people is find the best doctor you can. Find a doctor that can take your case, that cares about how you're doing, because there's so many doctors that misinterpret, misunderstand, misdiagnose this disease that people spend years hopping doctor to doctor, and it's just a horrible way. It's a very isolating and lonely disease. So my advice to people is that, figure out how to manage it the best you can, surround yourself with support, and then do the best to love yourself, because if you have to be able to love yourself with this disease, because it's not going to love you. This disease wants me to suffer. And so I have to fight that thing that's haunting me, that monster that's, but it's not a competition. It's not like I'm sicker than someone else or they're sicker than me. I keep it in my mind, and I try to remind people that this isn't a competition. Everybody has a burden to carry. Everybody has something that's chasing them, haunting them, making their lives difficult. And it doesn't even have to be a chronic illness. It could be anything.
Yeah.
And so I think just relating and being empathetic towards people who you may not understand give them empathy. Don't judge them right off the bat because they may be going through something that you can't even imagine.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right. Now, Steve, I've heard of people that they get one of their biggest symptoms is hearing loss.
Yeah.
Have you experienced that as well?
Oh, absolutely. I'm almost deaf in my left ear. I have a hearing aid in right now. I'm single-sided deafness, which is a whole another symptom, which is very difficult. Hypercosis. I have all the hearing issues that come with it. The hearing aid helps. It doesn't help me hear better, but it just makes me feel a little bit more balanced. Makes me feel a little more balanced. I don't know how that works, but it doesn't help me. Sorry, I keep kind of blocking myself into a dark spot here. But yeah, I like the hearing aid. Some people don't like them. Some people, I swear by mine, and because it works for me. But I'm not going to say that works for everybody. Everybody has to figure out their own little niche. But yeah, hearing is very difficult. Loud restaurants, bars, if there's more than one noise going on in a room, it drives me crazy.
Yeah, you're right. Now, tell us a little bit about the bicycle ride that you did to raise awareness and to also bring the reality of how your life is like living with Meniere's.
Yeah. Within the last year, I've had two really good friends, female friends that have died of cancer that were my age, and my stepfather died fighting heart disease in the last year. And I spent 8 years pretty much riding my couch, going to jobs I could, but pretty much I rest a lot and manage my symptoms full time. And the loss and watching them fight to the end, I woke up one morning and just thought, if they had a chance to live one more day, they would want to do something special. And so I put myself in their shoes and I just decided I need to do something special. And the bike ride was just a platform to raise awareness for our disease. I'm not an avid cyclist. I hate exercising. I don't ride. I don't go to the gym. I don't do any of that. I lay on my couch. That's my exercise. So I thought with a disease that gives me such a debilitating balance issues where I have to use a cane some days and hold walls and furniture, I figured if I could ride a bike 1,400 miles, that would maybe raise some eyebrows. And it did, really did. And people started following the trip and we posted on social media 2 or 3 times a day. And it was just a platform for awareness. And with awareness comes funds for research. And it ended up happening. We ended up raising over $10,000 just for research. So, and my brother Dave and I came up with this idea and we just ran with it and it just went out. It went crazy. It was great.
Yeah. Now, first of all, let me congratulate you because that's not an easy feature to do, even for somebody that is healthy and normal, let alone somebody that is dealing with actual vertigo and balance issues. So, like, kudos for that. Like, that's. I was very proud of you when I saw it online. Also, you raised quite a following of, I like to say, friends in social media that really looked up to you and they were impressed because many of them kind of like saw their story in your story. They said, well, I've been living struggling for all these years. If Steve is able to do something that takes him out of his comfort zone, maybe I can too. So that motivated a lot of people. So how do you feel the reaction has been from the social media community?
That was very humbling because 2 years ago, if someone would have said, hey, hop on a bike and ride 1,400 miles, I would have said, you're crazy. No way. I was just too sick to do it. I've kind of felt called to do it. I don't know how to explain it. If it was God tapping me on the shoulder, I just wanted to do something special. And then that seed got planted in my mind and my heart that, maybe you could do this bike trip and it'd be a fun adventure. Now, I couldn't have done it without a great team surrounding me. I just couldn't just take off. So my brother Dave drove the support van. Then I had Bill, Bryce, Brian, and Emmett that all joined in the trip at various points to help me. So I did have a great support team and family back home. But the social media was very difficult for me because I belong to some Meniere's support groups, but I'm not a techie guy. I don't scan Facebook all day. I didn't have an Instagram account till 4 days before we left. I didn't have Skype until 2 days ago when you called me. I'm figuring I'm being put in an uncomfortable spot with all this social media stuff because it just takes a lot of effort. And on the trip, the social media, people with my disease and people without supporting me was huge. It just kept me going. And I realized, okay, people are actually watching and it's making a difference. And it was very, very humbling, very
Yeah,
humbling.
it's for sure. Now, Steve, I know that so the bike ride was a success. You accomplished what you set out to do, which was raise awareness and build a network of people that support you. What's next for you?
Okay. Obviously raising more awareness. And so, the three goals I have now is raising awareness, because with awareness comes funding for research. And that's number one. Let's figure out how to fix us.
Yes.
There's not a lot of people doing that. Number two is uniting the Meniere's community also, where the Meniere's community is very small, but it's very scattered. We're not a united front. Like if you say you have cancer, you're in the cancer family. You're in the cancer battle with other people that are studying it, and people understand that. But with Meniere's, we're so spread out, and there's support groups out there that are in patches around the world. There's people doing research in little spots around the world, but there's not a united front. And so one of my goals with my bike ride and my book and what I'm going to do from here on out is I really want to bring the Meniere's community together so we can really focus more as a united front to tackle this, because I think that's going to be important to getting this solved, is having a united front. And another thing, tomorrow I'm going to start my own nonprofit. So I'll start the paperwork for a nonprofit. And with that I'll be able to go after bigger money and more donations and corporate support, do some more bike rides with my brother, do an On the Vertigo 2 ride, because I think people would follow it. And I think I would be up for that challenge. But the nonprofit would allow me to have a little bit more financial backing for that. We're not wealthy. We had to scrape dimes together to make this last trip happen. So if we could get a nonprofit, we could get some financial backing, maybe do some bigger trips, a European trip or a South American trip or an African, the sky's the limit.
A Canadian trip. Come on, Steve.
A Canadian trip. We'll come through Calgary, but we're going to do it in the middle of summer.
Of course, yeah, you definitely don't want the winter, yeah.
So I have a lot of goals, and I have high hopes. Going into the trip, my hopes were kind of like, I hope I raise $500 and we have fun. That was my whole goal. We ended up with tons of money, tons of followers, tons of research being done because of my trip. So it's kind of allowed me to sit back and dream bigger. So I'm going to dream bigger now. And I have to do it a day at a time. I don't feel this good every day. Yesterday, I couldn't get out of bed, and I blew off all my calls and all my friends, and it was silence all day. But today, I'm up and I'm moving. So it's a thing where I'm hoping the snowball starts picking up speed and gets bigger and bigger. But I'm not going to worry about that. I'm just going to get up tomorrow and put one foot in front of the other, and whatever the plan is, I'm just going to try and do it.
And I think that's a big part of it, Steve. Often we put a lot of stress on ourselves because we have so high expectations of what we should be doing rather than what we can do. So I think you're right. Like it's some days we just don't feel good, and we have to basically write them off in a sense. But when you're feeling good, you feel that you can maybe take a step at a time and make progress on your dreams. So yeah, that's great. Now you mentioned a little bit about your book. What is going to be your book about, and when is it going to be available?
It'll be available April 1st on Amazon. It's called On the Vertigo, One Sick Man's Journey to Make a Difference. And I'm humbled because a book was not in the plans. I wanted to do the bike trip. I wanted to unplug, go back to my couch, and let everybody forget about me. But it didn't happen that people still followed and still wanted to know more about my story. And one day, about a month after my trip, I sat down to journal about 15 minutes, just to write down my thoughts from my trip. What did I learn? Did I learn anything from the trip? Just the inner health, just to, okay, let me reflect and see if I figured something out. And 8 hours later, I had 5 chapters under my belt. And so I kind of was like, okay, well, this looks like it's like the trip. It's just going to go where it's going to go. So I'm just going to follow it. And so I just spent the last 3 months writing the book, and it went really well. I think it's a memoir about my bike trip. So it starts with my trip, and there's background about my disease. There's information. If you followed anything on social media, it fills in all those gaps. You only saw 2 or 3 1-minute videos of here's what I was doing each day. But this book, I think, people that follow my trip will really enjoy it because they're going to get to see what happened around all those videos, which I think will be exciting for them. My brother Dave also throws in his 2 cents. So we kind of co-wrote it. So it's really cool to get an outsider's perspective on what it's like to be with someone with Meniere's every day. I think it's a really cool perspective.
Now that you mentioned the trip and the book together, there was a point in time, and you said this earlier during your trip, that you had a very bad vertigo attack to the point that they had to let you lay down on the ground on the street, then they let you down inside the van. Are you gonna cover a little bit of that through the book to say kind of like what happened, or you're gonna jump over that?
That's in the book. That I have a whole chapter or 2 about my vertigo attack, and it was very difficult to write because I didn't want to revisit that. It's just, you don't want to, people on social media with Meniere's were like, I had to turn that video off, or and the book will be difficult for people to read that chapter, but again, it's eye-opening. On the other hand, I try to describe it, which I said, it's hard to describe the indescribable, but I think the vertigo chapters in that book are very powerful, and they're gonna mean a lot to a lot of people, and not just the Meniere's community. Chronic illness, any chronic illness, anybody that suffers with any, like I said before, everybody has a burden to carry. And so I wrote this book in mind with the fact that I want it to be user-friendly for anyone in the public. You don't have to have Meniere's to enjoy or get something out of my book, because it's one man's struggle, and every man has a struggle. So I'm hoping that people outside the Meniere's community will relate to what's in the book also, and I think they will.
Yes. Steve, when these conditions first happen, we go into a state of panic because we don't know what's happening to us. We don't know if we're dying, which we often feel like we're dying because it's your heart races, your mind goes to dark places. There is no like an answer from doctors. You have to see, as you said, multiple specialists, multiple doctors in order to get diagnosis. What would you like to say to people that are just starting their journey and they are afraid right now and they don't think there is hope? Like, what would you like to tell them to kind of like guide them towards a better place?
I think the biggest piece of advice I can give someone that's dealing with this is you have to be your own advocate. You have to advocate for yourself, fight for yourself, because nobody out there is going to go out of the way to fix you or help you. So if one doctor doesn't have the answer, if you walk into that doctor's office and it's uncomfortable, or he blows you off and kind of doesn't take you seriously, go find another one. Keep fighting, be your own advocate until you find someone that is on your team, because it's a very isolating and lonely place. And my wife is on my team, my son is on my team. They love me, they understand what I battle with, and that's huge. But even outside of my immediate family, I have to advocate for myself constantly. I had to find the right doctor. I have to take care of myself, number one. And it's survival. And I will do anything it takes for me to survive. If that's laying on the couch, it's laying on the couch. If it's going out and enjoying a dinner, then I'll do that. But I will advocate for where I'm at with my disease every single day. If people don't understand it, then there's nothing I can do about that. And continue to love who you are, because you're loving someone that you didn't expect to have to love.
Yeah, that's very true. Steve, when you said that the Meniere's community, which it happens in a lot of the vestibular community as well, people are spread out into kind of like little cliques, little groups. Mm-hmm. What is it that you think we need in order to have a united front? Like, is it more awareness? Is it more connection, more compassion? What do you think it is?
Wow, I think that's a tough question. I think it can come down to a multiple choice. I think awareness is big. If someone that doesn't have Meniere's reads my book or followed my trip, at least if they run into someone who has a chronic illness that's invisible like ours is, then maybe they'll be more sympathetic. And I think that's a good first step. I think another step would be figuring out, and hopefully I can make progress with my nonprofit with this, is getting the people who are researching it more on board with each other. Like connecting bridges between the research, so that, like I said, it's more of a united front where we're trying to tackle the cause and the cure as a community instead of it being so fractured like it is now. And, I belong to 3 or 4 great support groups, and they are a huge help. And some of them have people in both, but, they're very separated. And I'm not calling for a worldwide support group by any means, but I think the more that the non-Meniere's public understands about this disease, it'll make it easier for us with Meniere's to go out. I don't talk about my disease every day on the streets. It just got tiring. I don't want to describe it and try to explain it. I've done that 1,000 times. So now I don't really go out of my way. Going on the trip, I decided I'm going to pull the curtain back and show people what it looks like for a month, every day with Meniere's. And it's ugly. It's not pretty. There's good days and bad days. But I think people seeing that if I'm up off the couch and I go to the store, it doesn't mean I'm healed and better. It just means I'm having a better day than I did yesterday. So I think just the understanding, people not being afraid, people not hiding behind the disease, because I did that for 8 years. And it's, now I'm in the public eye a little bit more, and I've made some super fantastic friends, but I'm getting more comfortable sharing what it's like. It's becoming more comfortable, and then just let it go. It's what it is.
Yeah. Steve, where can people find you?
Okay. You can actually go back and revisit the whole entire trip from beginning to end on Instagram and Facebook, because all those videos are logged, so you can, if you want to do Instagram, it's just On the Vertigo, one word, all lowercase, On the Vertigo. On Facebook, it's Facebook:On the Vertigo, and that'll take you to my brother and I's websites, and you can go back and follow the whole entire trip. I'm still posting once a week or so, and the book comes out April 1st. So on those 2 websites, On the Vertigo, will be more information on when the book's coming out, where you can get it, how much it's going to be. And I plan on donating some of the proceeds from each and every book that sells to research, because to me, that's huge. If 10, 15 years from now, someone comes up with a solution to my issue, then everything I've been doing is worth it. Every second of every penny spent. I don't keep any money I didn't keep a dime from the trip. We didn't keep any money. We donated it all. And that I will continue to do that, because that's more important than money to me.
That's excellent. Before I ask you my last question, Steve, I was curious, and this is more of a personal curiosity. Is there anybody else in your family that also experienced Meniere's, or are you the first person in the family to?
I know some people lean towards heredity for it, and there's arguments for and against, but no, I'm the only one in my immediate family, extended family, or anything that's ever dealt with anything like this. So, as I started battling, it was very lonely. I didn't have an aunt or an uncle that said, hey, this is what you need to do, or this is what your cousin went through, or, I was all on my own island, and I still am to a degree. I'm making great new friends like you today, which is fantastic. But no, there's no one in my family at all. It's just my luck of the draw.
Yeah, the reason why I ask is because you're right. A lot of people think that there could be a hereditary component to it. So I was curious to know that if anybody else in your family. Steve, my last question to you is, the channel is called Find Your Chappiness, which means find your happiness. How does Steve find his chappiness?
How did I find
your chappiness? Yes.
Oh, how do I find my chappiness? Couple of answers to that. First, my faith. I think God looks out for me. I don't blame him for my disease. I know I'm loved in that area. That's number one. So then that everything flows from that. My family, my wife and my son are fantastic. They put up with me every day, good days, bad days, my irritability, my anxiety. My disease runs my immediate family because we have no other choice. So their patience and understanding, I find my chappiness in that also. Also, right now, I'm finding it more online, meeting people like you and other people with my disease and seeing how they are conquering their issues. And it's not easy. It's just not easy to conquer this disease. You don't win. So surrounding myself with good people, good family, good friends is where my happiness comes from, but that comes from upstairs. So
Thank you. That's a very good answer. And I'm gonna kind of like throw a last comment in there because your answer gave me something to think about. Many people, I'm a believer. I believe in God. I'm not a religious person, but I'm a spiritual person. Like I don't,
back.
I don't, I don't try to sell a religion to anybody. I try to tell them that God is love, and we all experience love. So what you just said, that you believe in God, and that your faith kind of like keeps you strong. Some people have told me, if you have faith and your faith is strong, why are you sick? Why isn't God healing you? And I often tell them, I'm like, God is not to blame for this. And if anything, I'd rather believe in something and have that hope that someone or something bigger than me is looking down at me and saying, I got you. Like, there are going to be better days. Things are going to be better. You're stronger than this. Rather than just throwing myself in a limbo of darkness, thinking there is no hope. Like, this is just the rest of my life, and that's what it is. So thank you for bringing that up about the faith. I know I'm not saying that everybody has to be faithful or religious, but I'm saying that it does give you that little bit of hope that there are better things coming. How do you feel about that?
Well, I'm the same boat you are. I'm not a devout churchgoer, but I believe that every person's on a spiritual journey, whether they know it or not. That's the way I look at it. Find your spiritual journey, and if you take it seriously, there's more to us than just our flesh and bones, and that can come in many different ways. For me, I believe in God. I believe God loves me, but you know a lot of my friends, they're on their own spiritual journey, and I'm okay with that. I think respecting people's spiritual journeys, but whether you like it or not, everyone's on a spiritual journey, whether they know it or not. They may not even know it, but that's what living life is. It's not sitting here in my illness and just feeling sorry for myself. It's like, what can I do to make myself a better person that's going to matter and help other people feel loved and accepted? And that was what my trip was about, discovering it was more an inner journey for me. I'm glad that it steamrolled into become what it did. But for me, it was more about, I want to take 1 month and put myself in positions that I'm very uncomfortable in. I don't want to be in the public eye. I don't want to be out in the freezing cold weather. I don't want to be riding this bike. But if I do, maybe I'll find something out about myself. And I found out, my whole thesis is I found out that my whole life has been leading up to helping me deal with this and become mature and carry this burden with dignity and grace. And so that's how I sum it up. Figure out a spiritual journey where you can figure out how to live with dignity and grace, because if you can do that, then everybody around you is better off for it, and you're better off for yourself.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Stephen. You have a friend here in Canada now. If you ever attempt the Canadian trip, let me know. Let me know. I'll love to participate. I don't know if I can do the whole trip, but I can definitely like to participate and support you for a bit of it, and continue raising awareness, continue fighting this, and thank you, because I see that a lot of people respect you in the online community as a very positive person, as a very strong person, and whether you believe it or not, you are a role model for many people that are out there that are looking at you. So keep up the great work.
It's very humbling, and I don't deserve any of it. And so I accept it graciously, but that's not my goal. And if I can make one person a little bit more comfortable with who they are with this disease, then I made a difference. So I appreciate me today.
All right. Thank you, Steve. Have a good day. And then, I'm glad that we can find our chappiness.
Great. All right. Keep finding your chappiness there, Johan, and I'll keep following you too. Okay. We'll keep in touch.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.